Welcome to this fabulous confabulation with me, Jay Mills. Now, today I have a special guest who I am honored to chat with. She was the first African American woman to lead the state party when she was elected chair of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee in 2002. She was the first African American woman to serve as Majority Leader of New Jersey General Assembly, in which she served 8 consecutive years. And currently, she is the first woman of color to represent New Jersey in Congress. I would like to give a big welcome to Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman.
Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm just fine. A little tired, but good.
Yes. So, I would like to thank you for taking this time out of your busy schedule for coming with me.
It's my pleasure to support you.
All right. So, my first question is, I would like to know if your beloved father, Assemblyman John Watson, had a major influence on your interest in politics. If so, how and why?
When my father first entered into politics, my mother used to tell me, go with your dad, you're his date. So he'd have to go to a number of events, formal and informal. And my mother, she was like really the homebody. So she said, you go, you're with your dad. And I adored my father. I was the only daughter, so, he was my hero anyway. I loved being with him. So at the end of my dad's life, my dad always wanted one of us to run for office, and we all told him we weren't doing that because he had already compromised our anonymity. We couldn't get away with doing anything in our communities without it getting out. But when he died and I look back on the things that I had done with him and for him, I used to be his principal speechwriter, even though I wasn't working for him or anything like that. And I used to attend the meetings with him, and I always had an opinion about something. Always had an opinion and thought my opinion was the right one. When my daddy passed and his seat became available, I thought that was a way of keeping him alive and honoring the work that he did. And so I told the people closest to me, I think I'm going to run for daddy's seat in the assembly. And I did. So I reached out to the so-called party leaders and told them, some of whom were very encouraging. Others were like, oh, well, good luck to you. So I had to work very hard at showing them that I am going to be this candidate. I'm going to be this nominee. And I was.
Yes. So you wanted to do it to honor your father, and you found the passion of it eventually, like while you were...
Yeah, and I found a pathway. From 28 years in the executive branch of state government. So I knew government. And suddenly, both this moment to honor my father in this way became available at the same time his seat was available. And I was free to make that decision. So I always think that I'm where God put me. And he just happened to open up the pathway that I didn't have any idea that I was going to take.
So that's good. Your father had a big impact on the decisions and where you are today.
Remarkable. My father, I used to tell him, my father loved people, and he would do anything for people. I used to tell him that his service as a freeholder and then as an assemblyman was like his ministry, because that's how he treated it. And it impacted all of us. All of my 3 brothers and I have always been in public service in our principal careers. Some of them are in other ventures now. But he was a remarkable influence. And when we had dinner every night, my mother ruled that roost of 180 up. I had to be home for dinner. It was all about talking about politics. And my parents always told us, to whom much is given, much is required. That we don't have a lot, we're not wealthy, but we have a responsibility to look out for others. We have a responsibility to share whatever gifts and talents God's given us. That's how I was raised. Mm-hmm. So my parents' influence, and particularly my daddy, who was working in the space of politics, was very impactful on my ultimate decisions.
Okay. So, besides watching your dad, what things did you see or experience in society that made you say, I need to do something to fix it, change the policies, or to get rid of policies that just aren't working?
So my first job was working for the Division of Civil Rights, and I was hired as a field representative to enforce the law against discrimination. That was law against discrimination in employment, in housing, and in public accommodations. Having worked in that venue, you were always reminded of the things that were not equal and how you need laws in order to achieve that equality for others, and how you needed strong people enforcing those laws. When I left that position, I was recruited to start up a whole office of affirmative action, equal opportunity, and things of that nature in the Department of Transportation. And it was there that I found myself the only commissioner wing. And I had needed to be able to work to provide opportunities for a more diverse population to work in that space. And then when I left there, I was recruited for another department to enforce another law. So I've always worked in the area of someone's civil rights, human rights. But being an African American woman, being an African American girl, I've always experienced things that I knew needed to be settled or set right. Whether or not it was a recognition at school, that I knew that I did better than I was being recognized, or just some opportunity that I wasn't given, that I knew that I was the most qualified for. So that's kind of been the hallmark of why I work in some of the issues that I work in. I believe the government has a real responsibility to level the playing field. And so government is supposed to govern on behalf of the majority, and it's supposed to ensure that the safety nets exist for those most vulnerable, but that the opportunities exist also for those who are capable.
So when you were a kid, what things did you get involved in?
I wasn't really involved in like social programs. I wasn't involved. I tangentially was involved with Jack and Jill, but not because I was a member, but because one of my best friends. So I would go to their programs. But mostly I just had a what I thought was a very gleeful childhood experience.
Okay, so no sports or like music? Nothing.
I played, I played a little hockey. Ball. Okay. I was involved in academic programs of that nature.
Okay. So I would like to speak about some of your main priorities, such as education, voting, and women's rights. So starting off with education, in New Jersey, the student debt issue is a concern, with college students here carrying some of the largest debt burdens in the country. I say that to say, I go to a performing arts school and we lack some of the classes that most high schools have, like accounting and financial literacy. And how can we make this a requirement in all schools so students are able to manage their money and not rack up on college loans?
A couple of things. You're a high school student, right?
Yes.
So I've always been a very strong supporter of public education. And I think that we should have diversity in public education. I think we should have magnet schools of excellence. If you're a performing arts guru, you should be able to do that at the same time you get a high academic experience, so that it prepares you to go on to the next level. With regard to college education, I've always been a supporter of tuition aid grants. New Jersey provides free tuition to students. For the first couple of years, I was a co-sponsor of that legislation, and I've been an advocate of expanding Pell Grants. I also think that it is important that we invest more, particularly in New Jersey, but nationally, in higher education. That our investment in the front end will pay off in the back end when our graduates get jobs and compete. I believe that we need to re-examine and do something about the student debt that we have, and allow them to refinance in some respects at a lower rate, because I think the interest rates are too doggone high and onerous. I think we also should have programs where if you agree to go into certain fields, the longer you stay in that field, the more debt forgiveness we give you. But basically, I think we need to ensure that there's affordable, accessible, and diverse and excellent higher education available.
Yeah, because it's like in my school, it's either like it was an option between going to my home school and getting that education in financial literacy and accounting, and not like really focusing on what I want to do in the future, or going to this performing arts school but not getting the the basic education like financial literacy and accounting.
Well, you shouldn't have to choose.
Yeah.
You should be able to find a school that provides both that rich academic and rigorous academic experience, at the same time provides the space and the time frame in which to pursue your passion, which is obviously to perform.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So I'm quite lucky to live in a school district that takes the art and music program very seriously. They had such a positive influence on me in terms of my attitude, on how I react in competitive settings, how it affects my behavior, and ultimately how that shapes my future. I would like it to be known that the arts have such a great influence on students and should not be neglected due to budget cuts. How can we keep the funding for the fine arts so that all children can participate in the activities, and having to avoid families who are less fortunate pay any money for their children to participate in fine art programs?
Well, I tell you, we've just seen a budget to come out of the White House that will devastate arts and arts education, and it requires people to vote their preferences. It requires engagement in all of our communities. I think that there's no stronger voice than the voice of the vote. And so if you want to ensure that there's this sort of fairness in the issues that you're concerned about, then there are people that need to be aligned around those issues and need to have their voices heard. And so you as a student need to pull together other students. You need to send us letters. You need to let your voice be heard in Washington, or let your voice be heard even in the state of New Jersey, because New Jersey is very instrumental in how the money is spent for education. And then you need to get out there and help us register people to vote who aren't voting, but who would if someone like you asked them.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm part of an organization that allows youth to helping the less fortunate, feeding the homeless, working with the women in women's shelters by helping them with their children so they can relax, and also working with children with disabilities such as autism so their parents can run errands and stuff like that. And I say that to say I have a friend who has a child with autism, and the school they go to is out of the area because their zone school can't provide them with the resources that they need in order to learn. So what can be done to allow children with disabilities to be able to have the option to attend their zone school?
Well, I have a grandson who's autistic and has to go to special school. It is not always easy to provide that kind of individualized, intensive attention to students who need these things in a traditional school environment. But where we can, we should. But where we can't, we should try to make it as close to home as possible. There are some children who are in schools that they live in New Jersey, and because of their learning disability or whatever, they're in schools all the way down to Florida, and that's very expensive. So where we can, we should have them mainstreamed in the school, and where we can't do that, we need to have them close to the states in which they're residents. And I think that there's been this effort to try to mainstream as much as possible. but it's not going to always be possible, depending upon how severe the disability or the learning kind of construct is, and the kind of service and attention that the student needs.
Okay. So I just want to talk about voting. So I will be able to vote in 2 years. So what are some advice along for me and other teens? How should we prepare ourselves for the next election?
First of all, this is a very dynamic period, and so there are so many issues that are being raised just about every day. You need to be educated on the important issues, and you need to pay attention to who says what about those issues. 2 years is not a very long time, believe me when I tell you. You can get involved in local campaigns, even school board campaigns, to help you sort of get a flavor for how important this is. But there's no more important right that you have than the right to vote. Because if you don't engage in that, then you really don't have a say. And when you don't engage, you end up with people elected to office who are unfit to serve and whose policies are antithetical to what is required to have a strong, diverse, dignified, respectful society. So it's important that you all stay educated, stay connected. You've got all kinds of social media outlets. Pay attention to the issues that are really important to you. Do not get discouraged and think that your vote doesn't count. And do not think, and then when you have a chance to vote, you may not love anybody, but you need to figure out who comes closest to your issues and who has the best chance of winning. What we saw in this last election was Lenny in particular deciding that they didn't like the third party what we have. And we need to be able to separate the personality from the issues that they're advocating. Mm-hmm. So it's really on you.
Yeah.
And I would hope that in school you're getting some of that civic engagement and current events and things like that.
Yeah.
Read the newspaper, but you can read it online now. I don't think anybody touches the newspaper anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, that leads to my next question, because as teenagers, some feel that it's too issues are too complex, so they tend to stay away from the politics or tend to inherit their parents' ideas without researching on stuff. So can you advise teens on why they should care about politics and how important it is for them to express their concerns or policies that can affect them and their peers now and in the future?
So when you speak, we should listen. And when you don't understand something, we should try to explain it. But social media has a role in this as well. I know there are times when something will come up and I'll go right to my Safari and I go, okay, exactly what does this mean, And so if you've got a question, you can ask that question of a person. You can ask that question of that little smart thing you've got going right there and have it broken down so that you understand it. The issue is what is important to you. So if you are an education advocate and you believe that, as you do, that you should have an equal academic experience and financial literacy experience as you do the arts, then you need to be researching that. What does that mean? What does that cost? And then when people are asking for your attention to possibly vote for them, where do they stand on these issues? And you should never, ever, ever think that a question that you have in your mind is not a smart question. And you should never, ever, ever think that you won't understand something, because you may have to be it may have to be explained to you in a different way, but you will understand it because it's your issue and it's important to you. And so you just keep asking until you get it, until they get it to you.
Okay. So the next thing is women rights. So despite women earning similar credentials or more than their male counterparts, women still find themselves fighting for job opportunities and facing wage gaps. In place or help level the the playing field and truly be given an honest shot at proving their value and worth in workplace.
So that's another issue of aligning and voting. Women get paid something like 70 cents on every dollar the man gets paid for the same job. Women of color get somewhere between 50 and 65 cents on that. So that's an issue of another level of equal rights and civil rights. Pay equity is something that impacts not only just the woman, but the family, because so many women are single parent households. So it is an issue that we have aligned around. It is an issue that we march on. It is an issue that we need to vote on. Women represent 53% of the population. They represent that probably differential even in the voting population. And so in some respects, we've got to take some of the traditional thinking women and some of the women that we'd like to educate more and get to them. And it's the young people like you who will have an impact on it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of and kids who came together, and it was like one of the times where people were actually united fighting for their rights, along with Muslim rights and the LGBTQ community rights and people of color, etc. So because that was such a success, how can we ensure that the issues that we were walking for will be enforced?
Well, it's not going to be any easy, quick fix, because you've got people in the majority in Congress and in the Senate and in the White House who represent the antithesis of those things that people were marching for. But the more people that march, and the more people that march in the districts that impact those members of Congress and the party that's in power, the greater change that you can expect. I am really pleased to see that we're having a number, every time I go to an organization, they're talking about training people on how to be in this moment with this movement. You may have, this may be your issue, this may be someone else's issue. Everyone may have a different issue, but the connecting thread there is that you want equal opportunity, you want dignity and respect, and you want your issues to be addressed. So it is the coming together of the critical mass and not operating in silos. So as I spoke earlier today, I want organizations to have point people to reach out to other organizations so that there's a cross-pollination.
Okay, and my last and final question is about the caucus, the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls. So can you just explain what that is?
It is a formal Brooklyn and Robin Kelly from Chicago and me from New Jersey, because we did not believe that the public policy discussions that were taking place and the legislation that eventuated from them had our concerns at the table. And so we wanted to ensure that we were providing an outlet for Black women and Black girls to be able to share their stories, their concerns, as well as provide opportunities for Black women and Black girls to see those who are accomplished in certain areas. At the end, and there really is no end to this because it's a continuing caucus. So we're having an event on April 1st, and yes, we want to see all the young Black women come to.
Registered.
Great. Bring some friends with you. It's at Princeton University, and this one is just going to focus on and girls up to the age of 23, because we need to hear specifically from you all, from what's happening in school with things like expulsions and suspensions and things of that nature, opportunities, and as a young woman, how we define ourselves, whether or not we can see the beauty within ourselves. That's why I love the name of your blog. And just issues that we think that you all have a handle on that maybe we need to understand, that will help facilitate your growth and being able to be whatever it is you want to be. We've had some other forums. We've had one on Black women in healthcare. We're going to probably do one around the Supreme Court justice. So it is just, it's a formal venue for your issues to be aired and for us to take those issues back and to try to ensure that your concerns have a seat at that table.
That's really good. But is it too late to register? So for viewers who are interested to attend, is it too late?
No.
Okay.
No.
And how can they register?
They can register online.
Okay.
It is on my website. It is even on my Facebook page. I guess those are the two best ways to register. If they really get stuck, they call the office at 609-883-0026 and ask for some direction.
All right. Thank you for watching. I thank you for watching, and I thank you for chatting with me. But before you go, I want to give you something.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. You didn't have to do that.
No.
Thank you for inviting me, and
You're
thank
welcome.
you all for listening out there.
All right.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.